Yep. Okay. Anyone with the answers? No? All right. So it's E here, okay? Let's go through this quickly. Why is it E? So what is it saying? Like they're saying is at least one of them an integer, okay? So now the first one says x cube times y cube is 8. So as you can see, 8 is 2 cube. So you can easily have x is 1, y is 2, and you can have this. But that's not necessary, right? Like it could be like both of them are fractions. For example, you can have x is half, whose cubed is 1 over 8, maybe. And y could be, let's say, 4. Y cubed is therefore be 64. So you can have this sort of a situation. One of them is an integer, the other is a fraction. And it might so happen that both of them are fractions. So for example, if I do 3 over 2 here, so that's 27 over 8. To cancel out this 27, you need to put a by 3 again here as well, right? So both of them are fractions. In fact, they can be irrational numbers also. There are too many possibilities. So one is not sufficient. Second statement, x is not an integer. As we already saw here, x was not an integer. In that case, y was an integer in one case. And in another case, y was also not an integer. So the question is at least one of them an integer? So sometimes yes, sometimes no. Even by combining, you can't answer it. So it would be E. I hope that's clear. Anyone has any questions, doubts with this? Then we can speak out also. That's fine. All right. Let's move on then. I am assuming that it's all fine. Next. All right. Anyone with the answers? No one? All right. Okay, let's see. So what's it saying basically? So it's a overlapping sets question, right? So you have what percent of the students study either of the two? Either or means we're talking of the union here. So if I were to quickly draw a Venn diagram with Spanish and German, the first statement says I need the union of this. Okay. As a percentage only I need. So I don't need to know exact numbers. So as you can see, no statement has exact numbers anyways. So that's all fine. So one strategy could be if I want to know the union, I can, if I know this outside region, then 100 minus that would be my answer, right? So target is to figure out that. First statement says 30% study German but not Spanish. So that means this is 30%, this portion. Okay. But then that is not enough to answer the question clearly. So that's out. So statement one is not sufficient. Combining a second statement, sorry, 40% do not study Spanish. So that means we are saying this and this means anything outside Spanish. So outside of Spanish, these two together is 40%. Again, I am more interested in this whole thing. So clearly not sufficient either. So now we start to combine. We know this is 30%. We know this and this combined is 40%. So this becomes 10%. Once I know the outside is 10%, I know the union, right? 90%. So combining, I have the answer. So this would be C. Is it fine, everyone? Good. Okay. Let's move on to the next one then. Let me clean this up. Whatever answers you think is correct, then you can type in the answer in the chat. Doesn't matter if you get it wrong. Give it a try. So for this one, how many of you were trying to use GP formula or a compound interest formula, stuff like that? Anyone thinking on those lines? Okay. See, don't directly jump into formula and stuff. Okay. First of all, understand that GMAT is more about logical understanding of the question rather than applying any standard formula. Okay. Formula are there to supplement your understanding, not to be the main tool to solve. Okay. So here, what are they saying? They're saying within 5 years, would it double? Now the clue is here: double, 4 times, 8 times. 4 is 2 square, 8 is 2 cube. So they have given you the hint: 2, 2 squared, 2 cube. Now here they're saying in 12 years, it would be more than 4 times. Okay, if I just assume equal to 4 times, okay, that it becomes exactly 4 times. So you have a multiplier 4, and that took 12 years to happen. So if I were to think, then I can say that the multiplier 4 came by 2 squared, right? Because it's a, if you think of a geometric series or a compound interest concept, what happens? You always get the same multiplier in the same period of time. So here in a period of 6 months, sorry, in a period of 12 years, you have a multiplier effect of 4. So that means in a period of 6 years, each 6 year, you have a multiplier effect of 2. So here it is saying more than 4. So here it is more than 2. So we know that in 6 years, it would be more than twice. The question is asking within 5 years, would it be more than twice? So it's maybe, I don't know. I know that after 6 years, it is more than twice. If it had been given exactly twice, I could have figured it out. Okay, exactly how many times. But it's saying more than twice. More than twice could mean 100 times also. So there is ambiguity in that. So I cannot predict by any means that what would happen after 5 years. Whether it would double or it would be less than double or maybe equal to double or more than double, anything is possible. But now if you look at the second statement, it is 8 times. Now 8 is 2 cubed, means there are 3 multipliers of 2. 2 times again, 2 times, another 2 times. And since this 3 times happened and 12 by 3 is 4 years, so I can now say that every 4-year period, you have a multiplier of 2. Now you are saying more than 8 times. So that means it would be more than 2 times. So if it in 4 years it is more than 2 times, then definitely in 5 years it must have been more than 2 times. There is no doubt about it. So 2 is sufficient, 1 is not. So the answer is B. So there was no need to use any formula at all. Okay. In fact, using a formula would actually make the thing much more difficult to understand, and most likely you would get confused because there will be too many unknowns. Starting value is unknown. How many times is an unknown? Within 5 years, within 12 years, like that, they're saying. So that also time period is also not very fixed number, right? So it's best solved by understanding the logic. Okay. Is this clear now? I hope. So I'll move on to the next one. All right. Yes. Okay. Both of you have got the right answer. It's answer C. But then how did you solve? That is the next thing. Okay. So here, if you look at it, I'll just quickly go through the steps. So we have two items. The idea is to represent it in a diagrammatic fashion. Okay, like don't write statements. So you have two items. You have cost one, cost two, selling price one, selling price two. Okay. Now what's it saying? The cost price of the first one is 180 less than the selling price of the latter. Okay. So this gap is $180. Fine. Okay. We'll use that later if required. Selling price of the first one. So this you are looking at is 26% more than the cost price of the second one. So if this were X, then this is 1.266. Okay. Or you could have started off with 100 also. That's fine. So 100 and 126 or x and 1.26x multiplier. Now selling price of the first cycle. So this itself again is 5% more than the selling price of the other. So that means if this were y, because let's take another number, okay? So this would be 1.05y. Now you are basically saying that these two are the same thing because both are the selling price of the first item. So we have 126x equals 105y. So x over y is 21 will cancel 5 over 6. Now the question they have asked is profit on the second one. So that means we are interested in x and y only. So this 180 is actually pretty useless. So we have x as 5 and y as 6. That's the proportion. X is 5, y is 6. So you made a profit of 1 on 5. So that's a 20% profit. So C. Are the steps okay? We'll try to use as little calculation, as little computation or statements or whatever required using numbers or trying to equate in this case 126x and 105y. We get the ratio. We are done. Let's move on to the next one. Yep. Okay. Anyone? All right. Let's see. So it says that you have one alloy having the ratio of iron and copper in the ratio 5:7. The other one has 1:3. So now 5:7 means out of 12 parts, you have 5 and 7. Okay. The basic idea of ratios. Whereas this means out of 4 parts, you have 1 and 3. And they are saying that you mix them in equal quantities. So that means the number of parts in both cases should have been equal. But right now, as you can see, it's 12 parts. This is 4 parts. So you have to make that 12 parts. So 3 times, 3 times, and 3 times. So the total iron now becomes 8 and total copper is 16. The ratio is 1:2. Okay, this is the shortest you can do to get to the answer. Make the number of parts equal. Why? Because it is mentioned in the question that the alloys have been mixed in equal quantities. Is that okay? Shall we move on then? If you have any doubts, please ask. Else we can just make a move to the next one. All right, another question. Let's see how you can tackle this one. Chalo, okay. Let's quickly go through this one. Didn't get this one. This was easy. You could have just framed an equation and got it. But then the idea is not to make equations out of this. So how do we do it fast? So it says 20 minutes for 1 kilometer. This is 16 minutes for 1 kilometer. Please note that this is not speed. Speed is kilometers per minute or kilometers per hour. This is minutes per kilometer. Okay, so this is not speed. So don't think of like 20 is the speed and 16 is the speed. Then it would be wrong. So now what you do is, if you want to do it without any variables and without equations, pick a number which is a multiple of 16 and 20. So like 80. So if it were a 80-minute scenario, then John would have covered 24s are 4 kilometers, while David would have 5 times, so would have covered 5 kilometers in that same 80 minutes. Okay. I am choosing 80. Why? Because it's going to give me integer values. I somehow need the ratio. So what I just now got is the ratio of the speeds of John and David are 4 is to 5. Basically, the ratio is 4 is to 5. Okay. In the same time, what are the distances covered? 4 and 5. So that would be the ratio. Now, not interested in speeds as such. Now let's focus on the question. So this basically tells you that if it were a 5 kilometer trip and David reaches the end, then in the same time, John would have only covered 4 kilometers, leaving behind 1 kilometer behind David. Till here it is fine. What this basically means, 4 and 5, that if this was a 5 kilometer trip, then David would have covered those 5 kilometers and John would have covered only 4. The gap between them would have been 1 kilometer. So this is the ratio 4, 5, and 1. It could easily have been 8, 10, and 2. Okay. Now, they are saying that David beats John by 240 meters in a race. That means what? In the same time, David has reached the end. John is 240 meters behind. So that means you are saying if this one were 240 meters, so 1 is 240 meters. What is 5? 5 times 240 meters. So that's 1200 meters. So that's what? 1.2 kilometers. That's the answer. That means David covered 1.2 kilometers. That's the length of the race because David will finish the race. John would be left behind. Okay, so try to solve questions in this fashion. That way you will save a lot of time. Why? Because in this, if you try to frame an equation, then you have to think in terms of, okay, let's take should I take distance? Should I take in kilometers? Should I take kilometers per minute? Then do I do relative speed? Then how do I find out the gap? How do I find out the time? So you easily can convert this to a 7, 8 line problem and then get an answer. While this could have been just simply done by taking ratios 4 and 5. This was the important part. In the same time, they will cover distances in the ratio 4 is to 5. That's it. All right. So that's your answer to the sixth question. Let's move on quickly. Let's try this. Anyone? What's the answer with this? Anyone got it? No? Convert this in a fraction form. 4 over 7 is what? It's 1 divided by 7 by 4. So it's 1 by 1.75. And 12 over 13 is 1 divided by 13 by 12. So it is 1 by 1 point. So 1/12 is how much? 0.083 roughly. So you have got two fractions, 1.71 over 1.75 and 1 over 1.083. What fraction will fall in between? That should lie between 1.75 and 1.083. Now you have to choose the fraction in such a way that the numerator becomes the least. The denominator becomes the least. Okay? Why? So obviously x by y, x and y both should be the smallest possibility. So if you look at the options, 3 very easily fits in if you were to write 2 over 3. Okay? Which will then become 1 divided by 3 by 2, which is 1 by 1.5. Okay, so you can easily put a 3 in place of y. So that's the answer. There are 4 by 5, like 5 also can be done. Okay. You can easily say that it is 4 by 5. Okay, 4 by 5 will also satisfy. It's 1 by 1.25. But then between 5 and 3, obviously I wanted the least possible value. So obviously 3. Okay, let's move on to the next one. A bit of permutation combination. All right. So what's the answer to this one? What's it saying? There are two stocks, two sizes, in fact. So let's call it small size and the large size. And each size is available in 4 colors. So you have colors here and size here. So colors are, where did it go? Yeah, blue, green, yellow, and pink. So now you are saying that you pack the notepads in packages that contain 3 of the same size and same color, or 3 of the same size and different colors. So that means whatever you put in a package must be of the same size, whatever be the colors. Okay. So if it is the same size, and if you look at the small, so then same size and same color So same color, what are the possibilities? I'm going to get four of them of the small size. So I can say that, okay, three blues of small size or three greens of small size, like that. Different colors, all three different colors means what? Out of the four colors, I'm going to pick any three. So that would be 4C3, which is also four cases. So that means for the small size, there are eight cases. Now for the small size, if there are eight cases, for the large size, there will be again eight cases. So you have got 8 twos are 16 cases. So that is option B. Let's move on to the next one. This I hope is clear. It's best if you just illustrate and get it done. You have to be very clear about reading what the stuff is saying, okay? So let's go to the next one. This everyone please try and see whether you get an answer. Yes, okay. What do you think is the answer to this? Combining both or individually? Any one statement? Are you trying to make equations to solve this? What's your approach? So here, what is it saying? See, we just draw a sketch. So A and B start from the same point. X travel to Y. Now, after reaching Y, the faster of the two immediately turns back. So whoever is faster would actually go all the way and turn back. Two is correct. Okay, let's see. And the other guy is just going. Something like this has happened. But we don't know who is the faster and all. So we just know that this is the scenario. Now it's saying that is Amy at least thrice as fast? So speed of A is three, at least three times the speed of B. Is this true? That's the question. First statement says Amy and Bob meet at a place halfway. So they meet here, exactly midpoint. So that means one of them has gone all the way and turned back while the other is just going half. So that means what we have here is one guy has traveled one half, and one half means what? Three parts, while the other has just traveled one part. So that means the speed ratio is 3 is to 1. Unfortunately, we don't know who is the faster because it just says the faster person immediately turns back. It does not say anywhere that A is the faster. Okay. So since we don't know that, 1 is unfortunately not sufficient. That was a trap. Now 2 says if A and B started from X and Y respectively. So now this time they start from the opposite ends, X and Y. A is going, B is going, respectively they have mentioned. So we know who is from which end. They would meet nearer to X. So that means they meet here. So that means clearly B is faster. Speed of B is more than speed of A. But then that is not what the question was. Yeah, so that is basically the question. So is Amy at least thrice as fast? Okay, so that is the question. Is A at least thrice as fast? So here we clearly get it what? That B is faster than A. Okay. Since we already know that B is faster than A, then there is no scope of A being 3 times as fast. Okay. So the answer to the question definitely becomes no. So 2 is sufficient. 1 is not. Now let us say in this question only, if I just were to reverse this a bit, I say that if A and B had started from this, they would have met nearer to Y than to X. So that means I am now saying that the meeting happens on this side. A is going, B is going, they meet here. That means speed of A is faster than speed of B. But then we don't know whether it is 3 times as fast. So it now can be, maybe, may not be types. So now 2 is also not sufficient. Okay, if this was the question. So now 2 is also not sufficient. So now we combine them. We know that the speed ratio is 3 is to 1 with A faster than B. So that means clearly A has to be 3 times of B. So if A is thrice as B, then this becomes sufficient. So the answer to this question becomes then C. Clear? I hope this is fine now. So let us move to the next question. 1 minute. Let's try this. All right, let's look at this one. So they're asking is n at least 2 more than the product of 6 consecutive positive integers. So basically we have is n is 6 factorial plus 2 or 6 factorial plus 3 or 6 factorial plus 4, etc. The question they have asked is it even? Now clearly, if you have 6 factorial, clearly this is even. When you add an even number, this whole thing now becomes even. But then this, where you have added an odd number to this even number, the result has now become odd. So 1 is not sufficient. We can't say whether n is even or odd. Now 2 says n square has no more than 3 factors. No more means the number of factors is 3 or 2 or 1. Number of factors would be either 3 or 2 or 1. Now, if you are looking at n square, so squaring a number, you cannot have two factors. Why? Because any number, if you let's say n square is there, bare minimum, it definitely going to have 1 as a factor, n itself as a factor, n square as a factor. So at least 3 factors is must. If n is prime, then it will just be 3. If n is not prime, like for example, if it n was 6 square, 36, then it would be more. Because then 2's factors series would come, then 3's factor series would also come in. So all of those would start coming in. So if it is prime, if n were a prime, then it would exactly have 3 factors. If it is not prime, then it can have more than 3 factors. It could have 1 factor also. For example, if n is 1 itself, then 1 square is 1. So it just has 1 factor. Okay. So now it says that n square has no more than 3 factors. So that means we can clearly say that n is either 1 or some prime. And since it is prime, then there is an option of 2 coming in, or 3 or 5, etc. So like 2 square, if you have, so n is 2, then n square is what? 4. So the factors would be for 2 square, 1, 2, and 4. For 3 square, it would be 1, 3, and 9, and so on. So that means again, n can be either even or odd. Both are possible. So 2 is also not sufficient to answer. Now we combine. So if you look at these two, this one, as we saw, could be even odd, lot of possibilities. This one, majorly it is odd. Only one scenario comes in where this is even, that is this 2. Okay. Then there are lots of infinitely many prime numbers. So you can have 101 coming in. Okay. And all that stuff. So if you were to combine them, do you think that 2 is going to feature in the above series? There is no scope of 2 coming in, right? Because we are looking at 6 factorial plus something. So then 2 is anyways out. Now, since 2 is out, then the only common solution. So when you are combining what? We are looking at common solutions, right? So the common solutions would always be odd common solutions. There cannot be even common solutions anyways. So when you're looking at odd common solutions, somewhere in this series, not here, not even this, not even this, these are all non-primes. Why? Because 6 factorial has 5 as a factor in it. 6 factorial has 4 as a factor in it, has 6 as a factor in it. So this is always divisible by 6. This is divisible by 5. This is divisible by 4 and so on. But in the future, like later on, there could be prime numbers. For example, 6 factorial plus 7, if you look at it, that's 727 itself is prime. If this is prime, then this will feature here because this is only primes and 2 has been ruled out. So that means what? We are going to get primes greater than 2 if you combine. And primes greater than 2 are always odd. So combining, we definitely have an answer that n is even. No. So definitely not an even number. So C. Okay. So here we tested two things. One is whether you can understand this property that n square has no more than 3 factors. Prime numbers, squares of primes, that is, have exactly 3 factors. Okay. That's the property there. And when you are adding this series, at some point of time, there will be a case where it will not factor, it will not be a factor. There will not be any common factors present. It will become a prime number itself. Okay, so like 6 factorial plus 7. 6 factorial plus 8 again will be a non-prime because clearly 8 is a common factor. Okay. All right, so this is done. Let's move on to the next one. Number 11. Let's look at this one. So what do we do here? It says there are two groups. One is the committee, the other is the set of group of volunteers. Okay. Now it says that the committee members made an average contribution of $1,100. Okay. And this was 88% of the total amount raised. Okay. Now it's also saying that the number of members was 60% greater than the number of volunteers. 60% as a fraction is 3/5. So that means if the number of volunteers were 5, okay, why did I take 5? Because the denominator here is 5. Okay. So if the volunteers were 5 in number, then the number of members, committee members would be 3 more. Okay. 60% greater means 3/5 greater. So 3 more. 3/5 of 5 is 3. 3 more. So that means it would be 8. Okay. So if this is 8 and this is their average, then their total contribution becomes what? 8800. And this contribution was 88% of the total amount. Therefore, the total amount must have been 10,000. And if the total were 10,000 and 8,800 is coming from this side, then this side must be giving you the remaining 1,200. And this 1,200 is coming from 5 volunteers. So each is giving 1,200 by 5. So 240. Okay, so just picking numbers, proper numbers, often helps you to solve things much faster than taking variables, making equations and stuff. Okay. All right. I hope this was fine. Let's move on to the next one. Yes. Let's look at this one saying these two pipes A and B can fill a tank in 12 hours, 8 hours, and this one can empty it. They're saying how long is it going to take? So I'll take the LCM 24 as the work. So the rate of filling by A would be 24 by 12. That is 2 units per hour. And B would be 24 by 8. So 3 units per hour. Both are filling. Now it's saying that 3 hours after they were opened, the tank was half full. So that means in 3 hours, they have filled up 12 units. That means they are filling up at the rate of 4 units per hour. But as you can see here, they have filled up 5 units per hour, right? At that rate. So that means there's something which is reducing the value. So that means C must be -1 units per hour. Once we have this, we have the answer. So 1 unit per hour, 24 units will take some time. We can figure out 24 hours. That's therefore sufficient to answer. We don't need to calculate it, but we just need to understand that we can figure out the rate of C. That's it. So 1 is sufficient. Now number 2 is basically the same as 1. See, in 3 hours, if you have filled up half, then in 1 hour, you would have filled up 1/6. So that's what they are saying. That if they were open simultaneously, 1 hour before it was completely filled, it was already 5/6 full. Meaning what? That in that 1 more hour, they would fill up 1/6. But that is what they were saying. They are saying in 3 hours, they are going to fill half. Here I am getting in 1 hour, I'm going to fill 1/6, which is basically the exact same thing. So we'll not solve this again. We know already that it is the same as 1. So it is sufficient. So we'll just mark D and move on. Okay. So understand whether how the statement is framed. Just because they're saying that 1 hour before it was full, it's 5/6 full, then you don't try to solve that. Okay. It's become unnecessarily complicated. Understand that basically you are saying that in 1 hour you're going to fill up 1/6. Fine, which is basically what's the first statement saying. Okay, let's move on. 13. Everyone try. All right, anyone with some number? No? Okay. So it says how many 4-digit numbers? Content digit grouping 35. So where can you get 35? You can get it here or here or here. Now 35 exactly once. So that means you should not get 35 twice. So 3535 is not allowed. Okay. So if it is 35 here, now let's quickly can count this. This can be filled in 10 options. This has also got 10 digit options, right? 0 to 10, 0 to 9, 0 to 9. So 10 into 10, there will be 100 such cases. Minus one such case where you have got 3535. So that's 99. Now, when it is 35 in the middle, then there is no scope of getting two 35s. Okay. So this has 9 options. This has 10 options. So 9 times 10, there would be just 90. And here, this would be 9 options. This would be 10 options. So there would be 9 times 10, again 90. But here again, there will be an option of 3535 coming in. So minus 1 once more. So it's 89. So just to add up, 100 plus 90 plus 90 is 280 minus 2. So 278 cases. So the second option. Okay. 3535 would come in both of them. So you have to remove from both. Okay, next. All right. Here we have x divided by 13. You have got the quotient y with a remainder of 3. So x divided by 13, it's y, the remainder is 3. So we basically have x equals 13y plus 3. And x divided by 7, again, so x is 7 times, the quotient is z, the remainder is again 3. Since they are the same thing, just equate them. 13y plus 3 equals 7z plus 3. That gives you 13y equals 7z. So y over z basically is 7 by 13. That means y corresponds to 7, z corresponds to 13. So we can say that y is a multiple of 7. Okay? If that is the case, then and z is 13m. So the question they're asking is y times z. So that means y times z would be a multiple of 91. Okay, some multiple of 91. And you divide it by 13, clearly it's divisible, right? There is no remainder going to be there. So the remainder is 0. First option. Okay, so y is 7, z is 13. On a multiple of 7 and a multiple of 13. So when you multiply the product and divide by 13, there will be no remainders. All right, next. This one we can also pick some numbers and try out. But then once you pick up a few numbers, then because of the nature of the numbers, 13, 7, so there might be a little bit of bad calculation involved. So you might have to do that calculation, but you'll eventually get 0 with the first set of numbers you pick. So now since this is a problem solving question and not data sufficiency, you don't need to check with another set because the answer has to be the same. It cannot be different answers with different sets. That means in that case, you won't be able to mark an option in the first place. So once you get an answer 0, you just mark that and move on. All right. Next one. All right, anyone with this, what to do? See, here it's saying $30 is enough to buy. Does not mean that it costs $30. It could be less than 30 also. So we don't have equations here, okay? So we are saying that 3 books plus 5 pence is less than equal to 30. The question is 4 books plus 4 pence less than equal to 30 also? Okay. Now, if you look carefully, okay, yeah. So if you look carefully, 3 has become 4 and 5 has become 4. Basically meaning that you kind of replaced 1 pen with a book, made it one less, removed 1 pen, and you added a book. And you are asking me that after doing this, will it remain less than 30? So maybe this is, let's say, 29. After doing this, it becomes 28. After doing this, it becomes 29.5. So whether that is possible or not, this is what the question is. So now if you look at the first statement, now they were talking of 30, 30 here, suddenly made it 15. So let's double it just to make it consistent. So you are saying 6 books, 2 pens less than equal to 30. Remember your starting selection was 3 books, 5 pens less than equal to 30. So here what you are saying is if you remove 3 pens and instead add 3 books, it will remain less than 30. That means if the price increases, it won't increase that much that it exceeds 30. And if it decreases, then it decreases. Then there is no problem anyways. So now understand if you remove 3 and add 3, in that case, if the price does not go beyond 30, if you were to remove only 1 and add only 1, don't you think that the price would also remain less than 30 only? What you could not have said is if I had got you a case which says that, okay, it's minus 3 plus 3, but I have a situation where I have to do 7 books and 1 pen. Is that also possible? So then you realize that, okay, here too I have done 3 more and 3 less, but then I have to here add 4 and subtract 4. So adding 4 and subtracting 4, there might be a possibility that overshoots. We can't say. Okay. We can't say. But if adding 3 and subtracting 3 does not exceed it, adding 1 and subtracting 1, that's what you get 4 and 4, right? Adding 1 and subtracting 1, that definitely is not going to exceed. So 1 is sufficient. Okay. 2 is saying 5 books, 3 pens is less than equal to 30. You have already been given 3 books and 5 pens is less than equal to 30. So you again get you reduce 2 and increase 2, it does not exceed 30. So if it changing by 2 does not exceed it, changing by 1 definitely won't. For example, if changing by 2 and 2 increases the cost by $1 and it still is less than 30, then changing by 1 and 1 would increase only 50 cents. So if increasing by $1 it does not exceed, then increasing 50 cents will definitely not. The other case is like increasing 1 and reducing 2 and increasing 2 there reduces the cost. So well and good, it becomes even lower. So if I reduce by 1 and increase by 1, then also it will be lower, slightly less lower, but it's lower. So then there is anyways no problem. Okay. So this is also sufficient. So the answer is again, in this case, D. All right. That was the idea behind this. There is no equation to solve. Neither do you have to work with inequalities and solve it. Okay. You can just use this logic and get it. Let's try one last question. All right, let's go through this one. So here it says n is a perfect square. Which of them must be true? So if it's a perfect square, we did a question just some time back. If it's a prime numbers perfect square, then the number of factors is 3. Now, in fact, if it is any perfect square, then the number of factors is always odd. The logic being, if you look at any number, say 24, for example, okay? For every factor which is like 1, you have another factor on the other side, which product will be 24. So like 2, you will get you a 12. With 3, will get you a 8. With 4, you will get a 6. The square root of 24 is around 5, which will fall exactly midway. So the number of factors greater than and number of factors smaller than the square root would be always equal. Now, if this number was a perfect square instead of a non-perfect square like 24, if I look at 36, then the middle number would be 6, which is the perfect square. And again, you will have the same thing. On either side, it will have equal number of factors. Here in this case, it's something like this. So f factors on this side, f factors on this side, that makes 2f and one more in the middle. So the number of factors is always 2f plus 1. Now you realize 2f plus 1 is always an even number because is an odd number because f is 2f is always even, plus 1 will make it odd. So 1 is true. Now if you look at the second one, the sum of the distinct factors, basically the factors, the sum is odd or not, okay? So if you look at n being a odd number, if n is odd, okay, n which is a perfect square is odd. 1 will be a factor always, whatever be the number. If you leave that out, there is going to be an even number of factors because total number of factors is 2f plus 1, right? I'm leaving out one of the factors, which is 1. So that's an even number of factors, all of which are odd because the number itself is odd, right? Odd factors, all of them are odd factors. But this present an even number of times. So if you add odd numbers an even number of times, for example, 2 odd numbers or 4 odd numbers or 6 odd numbers, the result is always even. So this becomes even, plus 1, which is odd. The result becomes odd. The sum of the factors is odd. Now, if n were even, then 2, 1 will always come. And after that, whatever is the factor, they're all even factors because n is even, right? So in that case, if you look at this carefully, the same problem will happen that 1 becomes, like makes it an odd number. So 2 is also true. Now, number 3 says the number of distinct prime factors is odd. So if the number of distinct prime factors is odd, whether that is true or not. So distinct prime factors means you can have a number like 36, where the distinct prime factors are just 2 and 3. So they're even. There are 2 even factors. I mean, 2 prime factors. But you can also have a number like this is 6 square, then we can have 900, which is like 2 square, 3 square, 5 square. So there are 3 prime factors. So there can be even number of prime factors, could be odd number of prime factors. That we can't say. Number of prime factors can be anything. So 3 does not have to be true. So the answer is 1 and 2. Okay. So C. Okay. I hope this was clear. That was the last question that we had. If you have any questions, you can ask. Ankita, I mean, you are preparing, you started preparing for the GMAT or you have already done the preparation? And how many of this did you get right? I can't hear you actually. Hello?
I got 2 or 3 correct.
Okay. Have you started preparing already for the test?
For MBA, I have started preparing, but not specifically for GMAT, but yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. So I hope you are able to understand these questions, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Anagha, you have anything to ask?
Nothing, Sujay, from my side.
Okay. All right, then I hope you enjoyed. If you have any queries, Ankita or Anagha, you can always get in touch with me. Do you have my number?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sir, can
Okay.
we get these questions as well as the
I will.
answers?
I will share the link to the YouTube. I will upload this video. It's getting recorded. I'll upload this on YouTube and send you the link.
Okay, sure, sure.
Okay. All right then. Bye, everyone.
Bye.